Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Is it haze season again? When the haze hits, it disrupts daily life. We have school closures, we have health problems, and also loss of income. But these stories often fade with the smoke. Now, what do we lose as a country by treating haze as a seasonal nuisance as opposed to the crisis it is? Joining me on the show to discuss this further is Heng Kia Chun, who is the lead campaigner at Greenpeace Malaysia. Heng, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. So we're seeing air quality already being affected in certain parts of our country. What concerns you the most about where things are headed this dry season?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Melissa. Okay, first of all, we want to highlight that why the haze crisis need immediate actions. Because if you look at the history has shown that the impact, the problem of the haze. For example, the millions of Malaysian, Singaporean, and Indonesian has been forced to breathe all this toxic air. In 2015 to 2016, like the school closed, children missed classes, tourism affected, respiratory illness increased, flight cancer, and business slowed down. And our frontliners, such as farmers and fishermen, lose their livelihood. So while our healthcare system are also struggle. So the root cause is well known, which is the peatland degradations and the slash and burns land clearing in Sumatra and Kalimantan, largely driven by the palm oil and pulp and paper plantations expansions. So this issue is complex because it is a transnational issue, and no single country can solve it alone. So if you look at that, Malaysia assumed the ASEAN chairmanship in 2025 this year. Our leaderships on sustainability and transboundary challenges will come under the spotlight. If this haze return, it will come undermine Malaysia's credibility at a time when we should be showcasing regional leaderships on climate action and responsible business practices.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the reasons or the root causes of haze are well documented, well known. But when we think about how far we've come at addressing some of these drivers, tackling the drivers at its source, why do you think we haven't made enough progress in this respect? From you, where you're sitting, Heng, why do you think we have failed to address this when we know very well what has caused it?
Okay, if you look at the history, the results, I think in 2020, Malaysian government shelved the tabling of the Transboundary Haze Pollution Act. And then what is the current gap? If we look at that, there are two main gaps. The first gap is the member states of ASEAN are using ASEAN way, which means no interference policy, and instead they focus on facilitate the regional diplomatic corporations for responding to fire rather than provide a regional regimes of legal accountability for wrongdoer who caused fire. And then the second gap is for private person in Malaysia, the agreement of transboundary haze remain a regional agreement. It provides no direct legal assistance to those people in Malaysia who want to seek redress against transboundary haze pollutions in Malaysian court. Meaning that we want to push for the clean air law or transboundary haze law with transboundary haze control mechanism. And to highlight that the diplomatic cooperations between the government in Southeast Asia can coexist with law that hold domestic company responsible for the international misconduct that affect the regions.
Okay, can it coexist? I mean, what would you say to the business or to the parties who think that or who have resistance towards this, or even resistance to more transparency or environmental due diligence?
I would say that because if we talk about the transboundary haze, we also have to talk about the plantation issue. So this is an opportunity for Malaysia to lead. For example, I think I will, in our open letter to the newly appointed Minister of Environment, Datuk Seri Johari Abdul, we propose a 3 opportunity for Malaysia this year. The first one is to driving responsible businesses practice. Because the haze is not just environmental issue, it's also a business and governance issue. The Indonesian and Malaysian plantation industry are closely connected. Some plantations company, including those with Malaysian types operating in Malaysia, has been linked to unsustainable practices. However, this is an opportunity for Malaysian plantation sector to prove that they will not no longer tolerate deforestation or peatland destruction. Otherwise, Malaysian-owned company in Indonesia, they will have a risk of being shamed for contributing haze as happened during 2015 and 2019. And most importantly, the way to restore plantation sector's reputations is to stop the company destroying the peatland that increase peat fire and transboundary haze. So Malaysian company, it's time for Malaysian company to prove that they are not involved. And this approach not only improve air quality, in fact, these stronger measures will also help Malaysia to stand up as an ethical and sustainable leader in the global markets.
I mean, thank you for bringing up the new minister. I think this is quite interesting. When you think about the new minister, Jarigani, being given the portfolio, so he's the Plantations and Commodities Minister and now has been given the portfolio of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Do you see this as conflicting interests, like pulling him separately, or is this an opportunity for him to have an overview of both interrelated portfolios?
Because this new minister has already aware of he's already aware of the palm oil industry, so it's opportunity for him to push for more responsible businesses. So now you are doing the good and pushing plantation company to do something good. Now this is time for you to drive responsible business practices, because Malaysia is ASEAN chair this year. So the Malaysian government can use this ASEAN platform to champion environmental rights. While the ASEAN agreements on transboundary haze exist, it has been not strong enough to end the haze crisis. So what we can do, Malaysia can use its ASEAN chairmanship to push for ASEAN environmental rights in line with the recent United Nations resolutions affirming the right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Recognizing this right will mean that the government has a duty to prevent cross-border environmental harm. Corporations must be held accountable for destroying environment, and ASEAN must move from promise to real actions that protect justice, health, and sustainability for the future generation. So against the haze crisis is questions of justice, health, and sustainability for future generation. This will positions Malaysia as a regional voice for clean air, corporate responsibility, and sustainable development, showing that ASEAN's solidarity can tackle even the toughest cross-border challenges.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on Malaysia this year because of us, because we're holding the ASEAN chair, to get some movement of progress on this. But we can't deny this is a perennial problem. It's been happening for years, for decades even. Can I ask you, when you look at how Malaysia is approaching addressing haze issues, you compare it to the other countries as part of this transboundary problem, who do you think is leading in terms of action? And what can we learn from what they're doing?
I would say it's an opportunity. Malaysian government should do more than the current efforts, because like what I mentioned, that diplomatic relations can coexist with the actions. So what we can do is Malaysian government can follow the recommendations by recent Human Rights Commissions of Malaysia, like SWAKAM, in his latest Right to Clean Air reports, showing that Malaysia should enact a comprehensive Clean Air Act or Transboundary Haze Act that specifically address the transboundary haze pollutions. And this law that can empower the government to hold Malaysian citizens and businesses accountable, even their operate abroad that contribute to haze. The second, that can serve as a deterrent against irresponsible practices. Number 3 is to complement the sustainable farming and peatland restoration efforts to prevent the future haze incident. So for those, again, this is also a message to push for responsible business, because for plantation company, they are not involved in forest fire and haze. This is not a threat. This is an opportunity, because supporting this law will prove that they are clean, they are transparent, and they are responsible. And penalty will only target the bad apple in the industry, protecting the integrity of responsible businesses. Malaysia can use to say cross-border, this transboundary haze law is still possible. So it's time for Malaysian government to show political will to make this happen.
Right. Can I ask you, Heng, about what the public can do? So, based on your observations, how does the public engage with or support efforts to address the haze issue? Are we pushing our businesses and government to do more on this, or are we looking at this Haze issue as something that is a given that will come every year and we just have to suffer through it? What's missing in the conversations that we have about Haze?
Yeah, I mean, what the citizen can do, I think the first thing they have to talk to the member of parliament, the policymaker, to tell the policymaker that the Haze happened for more than 20 years. We have to tell the governments that enough is enough, and what we need is a lasting change. And because Malaysian ASEAN Chairmanship this year focus on inclusivity and sustainability, and this is a theme that must be matched with bold actions. So meaning that what we need to do as a 3 recommendations I want to highlight is enact a clean air law, and then push for responsible businesses and championing ASEAN environmental rights. So by driving responsible business practices, enacting a clean air law to address transboundary haze, championing for ASEAN environmental rights, Malaysia can protect its people, safeguarding the region, and set a new standard for the corporate accountability. And together we can ensure that our future generations will not no longer suffocating the haze that has been affecting us for decades. So the time for immediate actions is now.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Heng, for being on the show. And I hope you feel better. I hear that you are also affected by the haze and slightly under the weather today. Yeah. But thank you for sharing your insights with us today. I appreciate your time. That was Heng Kia Chun, from a lead campaigner at Greenpeace Malaysia. We're going to take a quick break here on Consider This. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the recurring problem of haze and what is being done to address the root causes of it. Joining me now on the show is Azira Aziz, who is a lawyer affiliated with Cerah Malaysia, which is an NGO that focuses on environmental issues, particularly air pollution. Azira, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Now, when we talk about haze, when the public talks about haze, more often than not, it's always in terms of pollution or a seasonal nuisance. Can I ask you why we should, or can we, or should we be framing haze as a human rights issue, as an infringement on our fundamental freedoms? I think the short question to that long one is, do we as Malaysians have a right to clean, haze-free air?
Well, yes, because on the 26th July 2022, the United Nations General Assembly declared access to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment as a universal human right, of which Malaysia, along with 161 other nations, voted in favour. So this includes the impact of climate change, the unsustainable management and use of natural resources, air pollution, land and water, and unsound management of chemicals and waste, and the resulting loss in biodiversity interfere with enjoyment of this right. In our federal constitution, we have Article 5.1, which states that no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty, save in accordance of the law, and implies that clean air and environment is part of it. So this is why we have environmental practices law, protection laws such as Environmental Quality Act, and particularly regulations, environmental quality, clean air regulations, reporting, which mainly governs industries and manufacturing factories. We also have other acts like Protection of Wildlife Act and National Forestry Act.
Okay, so this is interesting, but can I ask you, when we think about how to address haze, is legislation the way to address this issue? I'm just wondering where you see the current gaps are when it comes to some of the pollution laws that we have in effect in our country.
Yes, I believe that we need to amend Article 5.1 of our federal constitution to include the right to a healthy, clean and sustainable environment, and this must be expressly worded to include air, earth and others. So the word life itself, right now, as is under the case of Tan Teck Seng versus Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Pendidikan and another, Gopal Sriram JCA, as he was then, held that the expression of life in the Constitution does not refer to mere existence, but incorporates matters that form the quality of life, including the right to live in a reasonably healthy and pollution-free environment. So even as is, Article 5.1, there is a legal precedent that states that it should include quality of life. Quality of life, of course, the right to breathe clean air. So we recently had worked with Suhakam to publish in 2024 this report called Silent Enemy, Report on Haze Pollution and the Right to Clean Air, of which Cerah Malaysia was part of. There are many gaps that we identified there actually, but I'm just going to highlight a few. Malaysia lacks an explicit legal recognition of every person's right to clean air or a safe, clean, healthy and sustainable environment. We do not explicitly make public and ecosystem health as their main objective. We do not have a legally binding and enforceable ambient air quality standard. The new Malaysia Ambient Air Quality Standard is only a policy guideline. There is no institutional responsibility for ambient air quality, nor a legal requirement on any government institution to develop plans to improve air quality. We also lack a bit of citizen empowerment, but that's why Cerah comes in, and people who I'm grateful to have their support. Recently as well, the Madani government recently passed the bill on Freedom of Information Act. I'm hoping that will improve public knowledge about air quality, so that it can be facilitated by a legal requirement of public access to air quality information, public participation in air quality government, and justifiable rights to clean air.
Right.
So
well, yeah, so can we talk a little bit about the work that Cerah is doing? Because I think Cerah has done so much to really bring this conversation to the forefront. As you said, you've partnered with Suhakam, you've come up with this fantastic report, and there's been a lot of calls to have more legislation to address this. A standalone Clean Air Act for Malaysia to address some of the shortcomings that you've just mentioned. Can I get you to explain what that is? From your perspective, what would that look like? A robust, rights-based air quality law for Malaysia. What needs to be included in it?
There's a lot that should be included in it.
But I can imagine.
Again, I'll highlight a few things. An explicit overarching purpose of protecting public health and ecosystem health, thereby protecting every person's right to safe and clean air. A mandatory ambient air quality standard that is aligned with WHO's air quality guidelines. The legislation should also set out interim targets to guide reduction efforts towards the timely achievement of safe levels of exposure to air pollution. Establishing a national clean air administration structure, perhaps checked by the Prime Minister. Legal mechanisms, because for us lawyers, right, the challenge when they tell us, why don't you sue whoever company that causes the haze from overseas based on their investments, we can't, because of jurisdiction issue. There's a lack of foundation for us to base our case on, because it's very technical. Environmental cases are very technical. You have the burden, not burden of proof, for the prosecutors, they have to go for burden of proof. For us lawyers, if we are doing a class action, right, we have to bring in scientists, technical reports, even civil servants, we have to subpoena them, of course, to provide that kind of detailed evidence that specifies where the harm came from and how it harmed the litigants, and why they deserve restitution or compensation. But most importantly, we want long-term remedies. So what should be in this act is also legal mechanism that facilitate public access to air quality information, public participation in air quality governance, and justifiable rights to clean air. A section that specifically addresses transboundary air pollution, that empowers and requires the government to hold citizens and businesses domiciled in Malaysia that contribute to transboundary air pollution to account through the Malaysian criminal and civil justice system. Because we can't. If they do it at Johan Setia, like what happened the last time, it's fine. You can take action against them, right? They can be held accountable. They do it in Sumatra, you have to request information from the Indonesian government, and they don't feel like sharing the information with us. So there's not much we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a maybe misconception or a frustration maybe amongst the Malaysian public that not enough is being done to hold these plantation companies to account, right? So because they are the root cause of some of the root cause of the problem. Can I ask you then, Azira, what that needs to happen to make it easier for lawyers to deal with it? So you talked about the legal mechanism to allow this. Can I ask you about the Haze governance issue? So if this is a transboundary issue and it's multiple jurisdictions, can there be an effective transboundary Haze governance mechanism that will help lawyers like yourself hold some of these companies to account?
We are already a party to the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Solutions. So there are the challenges for Malaysia in particular, and also in Singapore. So Singapore has an anti-transboundary haze act of their own, but the issue for them is that when it comes to enforcement, which is an experience that Malaysia is also trying to learn from, is that they find it hard to litigate against their own companies. They also own assets in or have investments in Sumatra. So in that regard, we have to somehow persuade the Indonesian government to share publicly the information within their jurisdiction. It's very hard. I understand that. And I think people were a bit hard on Nick Nazmi, the previous minister. But he did attempt, and from what we were told in that town hall, that it was not possible at the time due to jurisdiction and sovereignty concerns raised within ASEAN. There are challenges to it, sharing of information. Like I said, for us lawyers, it has to be evidence-based. It has to be something I can prove. It has to be something I can tell the court, yeah, we can actually litigate against these persons. We have evidence that shows cogent truth that no one can deny.
Right.
And hopefully we can get some long-term remedy. But right now it's more towards pushing towards legislative reforms as well as policy reform, because it's a little hard, right? Unless we right now, so I guess advocacy is far more important at this point to persuade our international friends in the region.
Well, we have a new minister. So Nick Nazmi did his best when he held that portfolio, but we have a new minister now who also holds the plantation portfolio as well, and then now with this natural resources and environmental sustainability portfolio. What would you like to see become his priorities in terms of addressing the Haze issue? How would you like to see him convince our international friends, our neighbors, to deal with the transboundary issue of Haze?
I would like him to be more. It's actually a very hard ask, but I know it has to be done. Maybe because right now that Singapore and Malaysia complains about everything every year, right? Haze comes from the same country. We are deeply unhappy about it because of the economic as well as health impacts to our citizens, and of course to policymakers and politicians. It impacts the voting patterns of the citizens as well. So I would ask the current sitting minister to perhaps cooperate, and maybe we propose like a joint ASEAN fund or something to not just focus on the punitive parts, but we also have to somehow win hearts in a way that we are in this together. I don't think they want slash and burn practices to continue to the point that their own citizens recorded an API recording of 1,500 at one point. We complained about 180, 150. They went through 1,500 at some of the center of the hotspots in Sumatra. I can't remember which year, but so it is actually to the benefit of all if we coordinate and collaborate together as ASEAN to address the issue of accountability of all the companies operating in the origin of all the hotspots. And I'm not just talking about Sumatra, actually. I'm also talking about Malaysian plantation companies who also slash and burn in Peninsular Malaysia. That has happened. and they are complaints, and they are being held accountable. So I would hope that this is my hope for Indonesian minister as well. We would like to breathe clean air. It impacts not just, we complain as neighbors, but I'm sure it adversely impacts heavily your own economy and your own citizens as well. So why not just be more open towards sharing of data and have maybe a group of scientists that are under ASEAN banner, under ASEAN banner, working on this issue together and actually commit to the solutions proposed by these scientists and professionals. Because they would know better than that. Lawyers, we need all the scientists to translate certain things and make it like in a 5-point bullet form of explanation to us as well. So I really appreciate this kind of collaboration, because this is not like us versus them kind of situation. This is a situation where everyone's suffering from the same issue.
Yeah.
It would be best if we sit down and work something out that in a way that it's a win-win situation for all.
Yeah.
Because I feel that maybe Indonesia feels a bit threatened, but they shouldn't be, because we're neighbors. Even though we gaduh also, like if anyone messes with ASEAN, we will beat all the people outside the ASEAN together.
I 100% agree, Azira. Thank you so much for being so candid and for sharing some of those insights in your work with CERA. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Azira Aziz there, a lawyer affiliated with CERA Malaysia, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.